"Here, cleaner," the words, spoken in sharp, condescending Arabic, echoed in the cavernous, brightly lit showroom of the city's most exclusive car dealership. "Polish this. Perhaps a touch of true craftsmanship will elevate your miserable existence for a fleeting moment." The man who spoke them, Tariq Al-Jamil, a portly billionaire known for his volatile temper and vast oil wealth, flicked his wrist. A set of keys, attached to a heavy platinum fob, sailed through the air and clattered onto the pristine marble floor, coming to a rest near the worn-down work boots of Liam Slade. Tariq's entourage, a collection of nervous-looking associates in expensive suits, produced a wave of forced, sycophantic laughter. Leading the chorus was the dealership manager, Barrett Cole. He clapped his hands together, his face split by a wide, predatory grin that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. "A magnificent jest, Mr. Al-Jamil. Truly, the man is here to serve after all." Barrett's voice was slick with the kind of false deference Liam had come to recognize as the dialect of the spineless. He saw Liam as nothing more than a tool, a prop to be used in his desperate performance to appease the billionaire. Liam remained perfectly still, his hand clenched around the handle of his mop. The insult, designed to be a secret humiliation shared only among the Arabic speakers, had landed like a physical blow. He felt the familiar, hot surge of anger, a ghost of the man he once was. A man who had briefed generals, whose intelligence had saved lives, a man who had been valued for his mind. Now his value was being measured by his willingness to kneel. He kept his eyes fixed on the floor, the reflection of the million-dollar cars shimmering like a mirage. The image of his daughter Maeve rose in his mind, her face pale from her last coughing fit. He pictured the balance in his banking app, a number so small it felt like a joke. The upcoming appointment with a pediatric specialist was a sheer cliff he had no idea how to scale. This job, this soul-crushing, invisible work, was the only thing keeping them from falling. Tariq, enjoying the spectacle, took a step closer. "What is the matter, dog? Did you not hear me? My car awaits its polish." From a discreet position behind a support pillar, Vera Ashland watched the scene unfold with an icy calm. She was here for an unannounced branch inspection, prompted by flagging sales numbers and an unusually high rate of employee turnover. She knew of Tariq Al-Jamil by reputation, a vulgar man who used his wealth like a club. She was already disgusted by Barrett Cole's unprofessional fawning, which she saw as a sign of weak, desperate leadership. Now she was witnessing something far worse. She understood Arabic perfectly, and the billionaire's words made her stomach clench with contempt. She focused on the janitor. He was frozen, but it wasn't the paralysis of fear. Vera, who had spent her life evaluating people, recognized his posture. It was the rigid discipline of a man holding a tremendous force in check. She noted his clean-shaven, focused face, the economical way he held his body. He didn't look like a man broken by his circumstances. He looked like a soldier holding a defensive line. Liam took a slow, deliberate breath, the air tasting of leather polish and greed. He was going to do it. He was going to kneel, pick up the keys, and swallow this poison for Maeve. But as he bent, his eyes caught his own faint reflection in the marble. He saw a tired, defeated man in a cheap uniform, and a wave of self-loathing washed over him. What was he teaching his daughter by accepting this? That survival required the sacrifice of one's soul. That bullies always won. Number not tonight. He straightened up slowly and walked not to the keys, but directly towards the obsidian black hypercar. He stopped before it, his back to the billionaire, and simply looked at it for a long moment, a silent, personal appraisal. The showroom, which had been buzzing with Tariq's arrogance, fell completely silent. Everyone watched, confused. What was the janitor doing? Then, Liam turned. He looked directly at Tariq Al-Jamil, his gaze level and devoid of fear. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet, yet it resonated with a power that filled the entire space. His Arabic was not the crude slang Tariq had used, but the pure, formal language of a highly educated man. The beauty of this machine, sir, is in the hands that built it, not the hands that buy it. True value is not something you can touch. It is something you must possess within. A concept, I see, that is foreign to you. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. An associate of Tariq's literally dropped his champagne flute, the crystal shattering on the marble. Barrett Cole's face went from smug to slack-jawed terror. Tariq Al-Jamil looked as if he'd been slapped. His face flushed a deep, ugly purple, the blood rushing to his head. "You," he sputtered, the Arabic failing him as he switched to enraged, heavily accented English. "You understand? You worthless piece of trash. A filthy janitor dares to lecture me? In my own language?" He spun on Barrett, his voice a bellow that made the showroom glass seem to vibrate. "Is this how you treat your customers? You employ insolent scum to insult them? I am spending millions. This is an outrage." Barrett, galvanized by pure terror, scrambled into action. He physically grabbed Liam by the arm. "What did you do? What did you say? You idiot, you've ruined everything." "He insulted me," Al-Jamil roared. "This peasant must be fired, now, or I will destroy this dealership. I will destroy you." "Liam, you're fired. Get out. Security!" Barrett shrieked, his voice cracking with desperation. As two guards moved in, Liam pulled his arm free from Barrett's grasp. "I have a sick daughter," Liam said, his voice now dangerously quiet, a stark contrast to the billionaire's shouting. "This job is how I pay for her medicine." Barrett's face contorted with a vicious sneer. "Then you're a bigger fool than I thought. You sacrifice your daughter's health for a moment of pride? Your personal problems are not the company's problems. You are a liability. Get him out of my sight." As the guards escorted him away, his arms held firmly, Liam saw Vera Ashland step out from behind the pillar. She wasn't looking at him. Her gaze was fixed on Barrett Cole, and her expression was one of absolute, chilling finality. The moment Liam was shoved out onto the cold street, his phone buzzed. It was the text from Abe's caregiver. The words hit him like a physical blow. He had just gambled his daughter's security on a single sentence, and he had lost. Back inside, Vera let the scene play out for another minute, watching Barrett grovel and apologize to Tariq, promising him the car at a discount, offering free service for life. It was a pathetic display. She stepped forward. "Mr. Cole." Her voice was like the flick of a switch, instantly cutting off the noise. "My office. Now." Inside her office, the door shut. Vera sat behind her desk, a queen on her throne. "Explain," she commanded. Barrett, sweating profusely, launched into his panicked defense. "Ms. Ashland, the janitor, Slade. He was insubordinate, unstable. I had to protect our relationship with Mr. Al-Jamil." Vera held up a single elegant finger, and he fell silent. "I speak 6 languages, Mr. Cole. Arabic is one of them. I heard everything. I heard your most valuable client behave like a brutish thug. I heard my employee respond not with insult, but with a profound statement on character. And then I heard you, the manager of this branch, tell that employee that his sick daughter was not your problem." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that was more menacing than any shout. "Let me be clear. My employees are my responsibility. Their children are my concern. You sided with a bully to protect a commission. You valued one sale over the dignity of your staff and the integrity of this company. You have demonstrated a catastrophic failure in judgment." She pressed a button on her intercom. "Helen, please get me the head of our auditing department." She released the button and looked back at Barrett. "You will call Liam Slade. You will apologize, and you will reinstate him. And then, starting tomorrow, my auditors are going to tear this branch apart, starting with your payroll records. I suggest you have a very good lawyer. You may go." The walk home was a descent. Each block took Liam further from the gleaming, indifferent world of wealth and deeper into the gritty reality of his own precarious existence. The city lights, usually a comforting blanket, now seemed to mock him, illuminating restaurants filled with laughing families and storefronts displaying things he could never hope to afford. He felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of a world he wasn't allowed to join. The manager's parting words, "Your personal problems are not the company's problems," echoed in his head, a brutal summary of his new, terrifying reality. Driven by a morbid, desperate need for data, he stopped at a 24-hour pharmacy, its fluorescent lights humming under a flickering sign. He walked to the counter, the piece of paper with Maeve's prescription details already in his hand. "Excuse me," he said to the tired-looking pharmacist. "Could you tell me what the cash price is for this, without insurance?" The pharmacist typed for a moment, his brow furrowed. He looked up at Liam with an expression of pity. "For a 30-day supply, it's $842. The number hit Liam with the force of a physical blow. $842. It was more than 2 weeks' pay. It was an impossible, insurmountable figure. He managed a quiet, "Thank you," and walked out, the sterile smell of the pharmacy clinging to him like a shroud. The abstract fear of his situation had just become horrifyingly concrete. His decision to defend his dignity now had a price tag, one he couldn't possibly pay. By the time he reached the door of their small third-floor apartment, his composure was a thin, fraying thread. He paused outside, taking a deep, ragged breath, and forced his face into a mask of calm. For Maeve, he had to be strong. He walked in. The apartment was tidy but worn, the furniture second-hand, the blankets patched. It was a home built on love, not money. The most prominent feature of the main living area was the medical station he had set up by Maeve's bed. The humming nebulizer, a digital oximeter, an array of inhalers and pill bottles organized with military precision. It was the command center in his private, relentless war. The caregiver, Mrs. Gable, met him with a worried look. "Liam, thank goodness." Her breathing is shallow. "The oximeter dipped to 92 for a few minutes. I gave her the emergency inhaler, and she's back up to 96, but it gave me a scare." "You did the right thing, Clara." "Thank you." Liam's own heart hammered against his ribs. A dip to 92 was a serious warning sign. He paid her from his dwindling cash reserve, the act feeling like he was handing over his own blood. After she left, he went to Maeve's bedside. She was awake, her small face pale in the dim light, her dark hair damp with sweat. A large drawing pad was propped on her knees. "Daddy?" Her voice was a little breathy. Mrs. Gable was worried. "I know, sweet pea. But you're okay now," he said, his voice a soothing balm he did not feel himself. He clipped the oximeter onto her small finger, his eyes glued to the reassuring red glow of the number. 97. "See? Strong as an ox." "Did you get in trouble at work?" she asked, her eyes so much like her mother's, searching his face with unnerving perception. "You look sad." The lie tasted like ash in his mouth. "No, honey, never. Just a long, tiring night." He gestured to her drawing. "What's this?" She held it up proudly. It was a crayon drawing of a superhero in a blue uniform, holding a mop like a scepter. The hero was standing over a group of snarling, shadowy monsters. "That's you," she said. "Mop Man. You clean up all the bad guys." A lump formed in Liam's throat. She saw him as a hero, while he felt like the world's biggest failure. "I love it, Maeve. It's a masterpiece." He hugged her gently, burying his face in her hair, inhaling the simple, clean scent of his daughter, the only thing that was real and true in his entire world. He read to her for an hour, his voice steady even as his own world was crumbling, until her breathing deepened into the peaceful rhythm of sleep. He finally stood up and walked to the kitchen table, where a small stack of bills was waiting. The specialist's office, the electric company, the rent. It was an army he had no weapons to fight. He sat down, put his head in his hands, and allowed himself a single, silent moment of pure, undiluted despair. That's when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Annoyed, he picked it up. The screen showed the dealership's main number. A jolt of white-hot anger shot through him. He answered, his voice clipped. "What do you want?" "It's Barrett Cole." The manager's voice was tight, furious, and dripping with resentment. There was no apology. "Look, I don't know what kind of strings you pulled or who you know in corporate, but they've decided to overrule my decision. Don't ask me why. I think it's a mistake." Liam was too stunned to speak. "Are you listening to me, Slade?" Barrett snapped. "You're unfired. Corporate's orders. But I'm telling you now, this changes nothing between us. In fact, it makes things worse. You're on my list. I'll be watching you. One wrong move, one toe out of line, and I will find a way to get rid of you for good. Be here for your shift tomorrow. Don't be late." The line went dead. Liam stared at his phone, his mind reeling. Whiplash. 10 minutes ago, he was calculating how many days he had until eviction. Now, he had a job. He was saved. But he had also been directly threatened. Who in corporate? It made no sense. He suspected it was a trick, a way to lure him back just to humiliate him further. But it was the only hope he had. The profound, dizzying relief was so immense it almost made him sick. Miles away, in her penthouse overlooking the sleeping city, Vera Ashland was methodically building her case. She was on a secure video call with the head of her auditing department, a stern, no-nonsense man named David Chen. "I don't want a standard review, David," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "I want a full forensic audit of the downtown branch. Check every invoice, every timesheet, every expense report, every warranty claim for the past 2 years. Cross-reference the parts inventory with the service records. I want to know where every single penny went. I suspect Barrett Cole has been running that branch like his personal fiefdom, and I want the proof." "Understood, Ms. Ashland. We'll start immediately," David replied. After the call, Vera had her assistant pull Barrett's entire personnel history. As she read, her lips thinned into a hard, angry line. There it was, from 3 years ago, at his previous post as an assistant manager in Chicago. A formal complaint from 3 mechanics about unpaid overtime. The issue had been resolved internally. He'd been made to pay the back wages, and the company had settled with the employees to avoid a lawsuit. Then, 6 months later, he'd been promoted and transferred to this new, larger branch. The company hadn't just ignored the warning signs, they had rewarded them. This wasn't just Barrett's failure anymore. It was hers. A failure of the system she was now in charge of. Her gaze shifted to another file on her screen, the sparse one belonging to Liam Slade. The contrast was stark. Barrett's file was a monument to mediocrity and deception. Liam's was a testament to quiet honor. Defense Language Institute. She knew what it took to get in there, the level of intellect required. She knew the security clearance that came with it. What had happened to this man to make him choose a life in the shadows? What had he seen? She looked from the evidence of Barrett's corruption to the mystery of Liam's past. She knew the two were now inextricably linked. The audit would give her the numbers, the hard data to destroy Barrett's career. But the numbers wouldn't tell her the full story. They wouldn't tell her about the culture of fear, the daily humiliations, the human cost of Barrett's greed. To truly understand, and to truly fix the problem, she needed to speak to the man who had been at the heart of the storm, the man who had shown no fear, the man who saw the world in terms of value, not price. Walking through the dealership's glass doors the next night was like entering a hostile country under a flag of truce. Liam felt the atmosphere shift the moment he stepped onto the polished marble. The air, usually filled with the low hum of ventilation and the faint scent of leather, was now charged with a nervous, electric tension. He was a ghost who had come back to haunt the living, and no one knew what to make of him. He punched his time card, the loud clack of the machine echoing in the sudden quiet of the back office. The junior salespeople, who once barely registered his presence, now found reasons to be intensely interested in their computer screens or the scuff on their shoes whenever he passed. They were afraid of Barrett Cole, and Liam was now the living embodiment of the manager's ire. To be seen even acknowledging him was a risk they were unwilling to take. He retrieved his cart. the familiar squeak of the wheels a small, grounding reality in a world that had tilted on its axis. As he began his route, he felt the weight of whispered conversations and furtive glances following him. He was a walking anomaly, a janitor who had talked back to a billionaire and somehow survived the firing squad. In the cavernous service bay, the atmosphere was different. Here, among the grease-stained mechanics and hard-working detailers, the fear of Barrett was tempered by a grudging respect for Liam's defiance. As he was refilling his bucket, Sal, the young mechanic whose face was perpetually smudged with oil, cornered him behind a large pillar lift. "Hey," Sal whispered, his eyes darting nervously towards the manager's office. "Man, I don't know how you did it, but you've got him running scared. I've never seen him look so spooked." "He was on the phone all day, yelling at someone from corporate. I didn't do anything," Liam said quietly, his voice neutral. He couldn't afford to be seen as a ringleader. Sal shook his head, a wry grin on his face. "Yeah, right. Look, just be careful, man. He's been shorting my overtime for the last 6 months. A guy like that, who steals from his own crew, he'll do anything to protect his scam." He gave Liam a quick, supportive nod. "We're with you, you know. Just can't say it out loud." Sal slipped away, leaving Liam with a renewed sense of the stakes. This wasn't just his fight. A few minutes later, as he passed through the employee break room, Chloe, the older woman from accounting, discreetly placed a fresh, hot cup of coffee on the edge of his cart as he walked by. She didn't say a word, just gave him a small, encouraging smile. It was a tiny gesture, but in this place, it felt like a profound act of rebellion. Barrett, however, was not a man to let a rebellion simmer. Since he couldn't fire Liam, he had decided to break him instead. At the 11 p.m. staff briefing for the night crew, he made his move. "All right, listen up," Barrett announced, his voice oozing a false heartiness that set everyone's teeth on edge. "Corporate has been emphasizing a renewed focus on deep-level sanitation. They want this facility to be a shining example of the Ashland standard." His eyes found Liam in the back of the small group. "So, we're going to be assigning some special projects. Slade, tonight I want you to handle the grease traps in the main garage, empty and scrubbed. Then, the dumpster pads out back need to be pressure washed. And finally, the mechanics' washroom. I want the grout on that floor white enough to eat off of." A wave of uncomfortable silence passed through the crew. They were the 3 filthiest, most back-breaking jobs in the entire facility. It was a public humiliation, a clear and deliberate punishment. Liam's face remained an impassive mask. "Understood, Mr. Cole." An hour later, Liam was on his hands and knees in the mechanics' washroom, the acrid smell of chemical cleaner burning his nostrils, when Barrett appeared in the doorway. He leaned against the frame, a smug look of satisfaction on his face as he watched Liam scrub. "Working hard, Slade?" he said. "That's what I like to see." Liam didn't look up. "Just doing my job. See, I think you have your mind on other things," Barrett continued, his voice taking on a menacing edge. "You know, people with distractions at home, they're not reliable. Their focus slips. They make mistakes. And in a place like this, mistakes can be costly, very costly." The veiled threat, a clear jab at Maeve's illness, sent a jolt of cold fury through Liam. He paused his scrubbing, the silence stretching between them. He slowly lifted his head, his eyes meeting Barrett's in the grimy mirror. He didn't say a word. He simply held the manager's gaze, his expression one of pure, unyielding ice. It was the look of a man who had faced down far worse things than a petty tyrant in a cheap suit. Unnerved, Barrett's smirk faltered. He cleared his throat and pushed himself off the door frame. "Just get it done," he muttered, before turning and walking away. The next morning, the dealership was thrown into chaos. At precisely 10 a.m., a gleaming black chauffeur-driven sedan with the Ashland corporate insignia on the door pulled up to the main entrance. Vera Ashland stepped out, looking every bit the commander-in-chief in a sharp, tailored navy suit. She didn't wait to be announced. She swept into the showroom, her presence immediately commanding the attention of every person in the building. Barrett scrambled out of his office, a look of panicked surprise on his face.
"Miss Ashland, what an honor! If I had known you were coming—"
"That was the point, Mr. Cole," Vera said, her tone leaving no room for pleasantries. "I'm conducting a spot inspection. Please continue with your work. I'll walk the floor myself." For the next hour, she was a quiet storm moving through the facility. She spoke to mechanics, receptionists, and salespeople, asking sharp, specific questions that betrayed a deep knowledge of the business. What's the turnaround on a standard engine diagnostic? How long does it take to get a part shipped from the regional warehouse? What's our closing rate on walk-in customers this quarter? Her intense focus had every employee on edge, but none more so than Barrett, who trailed her at a distance like a nervous shadow. Finally, she made her way to the back of the facility, to the service exit where the dumpsters were kept. She found Liam there, wrestling a high-pressure hose, washing years of grime off the concrete pad. The contrast was stunning. The immaculately dressed CEO and the janitor in his spattered uniform, performing the foulest job Barrett could find for him. She waited until he switched off the roaring machine. "Mr. Cole," she called over her shoulder, not even looking at him. "I would like a moment alone with my employee." Barrett, who had been hovering nearby, froze. "Ms. Ashland, he's in the middle of a priority task." "He is," she agreed, her gaze finally turning to him, cold and hard. "And I am his CEO. Leave us." Chastened, Barrett scurried away. When they were alone, Vera walked closer to Liam, seemingly unfazed by the grimy surroundings. "This is not what I had in mind when I spoke of a deep cleaning, Mr. Slade." "A job's a job, ma'am," Liam said, his voice even. "Some jobs are punishments in disguise," she replied, her eyes sharp. "I do not tolerate managers who use company payroll for personal vendettas." She reached into her jacket pocket and produced a small, plain white envelope. "This is a personal matter, not a corporate one. My assistant will be in touch to arrange a meeting. I believe we have a common interest in seeing that integrity is respected in this company, from top to bottom." She placed the envelope on a clean, dry patch of a nearby retaining wall, then turned and swept back inside, leaving Liam standing there, the roar of the pressure washer replaced by the frantic pounding of his own heart. The call came the following afternoon. The voice on the other end was a woman's, her tone as crisp and professional as a starched collar. She introduced herself as Helen, Ms. Ashland's executive assistant, and gave Liam a time and an address. It was for that evening, at a quiet, old-world cafe in the city's historic district, a place so far removed from the chrome and glass of the dealership it might as well have been in another country. As Liam drove his beat-up sedan towards the meeting, his mind was a whirlwind of strategic calculations, a skill honed over years of operating in hostile territories. He ran through the potential scenarios, his military intelligence training kicking in instinctively. Was this a genuine attempt to gather information? Or was it a trap? Could Vera Ashland be testing his loyalty, trying to see if he would complain about his manager, only to report his insubordination back to Barrett? The corporate world was just as treacherous as any war zone he had ever known, just with better suits and more subtle forms of assassination. He decided on his approach. He would listen more than he spoke. He would be truthful but reserved, and he would not, under any circumstances, reveal the full extent of his desperation. The cafe, the Quill and Compass, was exactly as he'd pictured it, a sanctuary of dark wood, worn leather, and the hushed murmur of quiet conversations. It smelled of old books and freshly ground coffee. The clientele was older, dressed in tasteful, expensive fabrics, people who conducted their business in quiet tones, not with boorish shouts. Liam, in his clean but simple button-down shirt and jeans, felt like an intruder, a different species wandering into a protected habitat. He saw her immediately, tucked away in a discreet booth in the back corner, a pot of tea on the table in front of her. Vera was already there, and as he approached, He was struck again by how deliberately she had softened her image. She wore a simple, elegant gray turtleneck and dark trousers. Her usual armor of corporate power was gone, replaced by an aura of calm, approachable authority. It was a calculated choice, a way to level the playing field, and Liam recognized the tactical brilliance of it. "Mr. Slade," she said, her voice a low murmur that wouldn't carry. She gestured to the seat opposite her. "Thank you for coming. I know I put you in a very difficult position." A waitress appeared, and Vera ordered him a coffee with a quiet, practiced ease. When they were alone again, she leaned forward, her hands folded on the table. "I want to be clear," she began, her gaze direct and unflinching. "This meeting is confidential. Nothing we discuss will leave this booth. You have my word, and my word is the foundation of my company." She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle. "Your file and your conduct at the dealership have raised certain questions for me. It says you were a linguist for the Army, a specialist in Near Eastern languages. That is a position that requires immense intellect, discipline, and a high-level security clearance. Yet you've spent the last year working for me, cleaning floors. I am finding it difficult to reconcile the two realities of who you are." It was a direct challenge, an invitation to reveal himself. Liam took a slow sip of his coffee, gathering his thoughts. He decided to give her more than just the facts. He would give her the reason. "After my service, I did private consulting for a few years," he began, his voice quiet but steady. "Good money, but it was the same life, just with better hotels, always moving, always on edge." He looked down into his cup. "Then I lost my wife. Cancer. It was a quiet, brutal war, and it was the only one I ever truly lost. After she was gone, all that mattered was providing a stable, peaceful life for our daughter, Maeve." He looked up, and for the first time, he let her see the raw truth in his eyes. "The night shift at your dealership allowed me to be there for Maeve during the day, to take her to her doctor's appointments, to make sure she was never alone for long. The work, it's honest. It's simple. It doesn't follow me home. It lets me save all of my energy, all of my focus for her. I am not a janitor, Miss Ashland. I am a father who mops floors." Vera listened without interruption, her expression unreadable but intensely focused. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. "My father was a mechanic," she said softly, her voice taking on a distant, personal tone. "The best engine man in 3 counties. He could diagnose a problem by the sound a car made from a block away. He worked for a man who ran a small local garage, a petty tyrant who cheated him on his hours and paid him a fraction of what he was worth. My father died with grease under his fingernails and barely a penny to his name because he was too honorable to fight a man who had no honor." She looked at Liam, and in her eyes, he saw a shared history of loss and injustice. "I promised myself I would never be powerless like that again," she continued. "And I swore that if I ever was in a position of power, I would never, ever stand by while good, hard-working people were exploited by bullies like the one who destroyed my father. Bullies like Barrett Cole." The name landed on the table between them, a declaration of war. The personal stories were over. The alliance was about to be forged. "I have a significant problem at my downtown branch," Vera said, her tone shifting back to the sharp-edged CEO. "I have payroll data that shows consistent, systematic wage theft. I have invoices that show clear supply chain fraud. But what I have is a case for a lawsuit, a quiet settlement. What I want is a case for a revolution in how this company is run." She leaned in, her voice dropping. "He will claim the payroll data is a clerical error. He'll say the supply invoices were a vendor mistake. He has a plausible excuse for everything I can prove on paper. But he has no excuse for a pattern of abuse, for the culture of fear he has cultivated. That's what I need you to help me document. The human cost." She watched him, her gaze intense. I can fire him, but I want to destroy the system that allows men like him to thrive. To do that, I need someone on the inside, someone who the staff respects, someone who is not afraid of him. Liam knew this was the point of no return. He thought of Sal's slumped shoulders, of Chloe's tear-streaked face, of the palpable fear that permeated every corner of that dealership. This was no longer just about him. He was being asked to stand for all of them. "What would you need me to do?" he asked. "Just your job," she replied. "Keep your eyes and ears open. Observe. Be the voice for those who are too afraid to speak. I need to know the specifics, the day-to-day injustices that never make it into a formal report." From her handbag, Vera produced a small, slim cardboard box. She slid it across the table. "This is for our communication. It's a secure, encrypted satellite phone. Untraceable. The only number programmed into it is for my personal assistant. Use it to report anything you see, no matter how small. A pattern is built from small stones." Liam looked at the box, the tangible symbol of this new, dangerous mission. What happens when he finds out? And he will. "By the time he finds out," Vera said, her voice firm with absolute conviction, "it will be too late for him to do anything about it. I protect my assets, Liam." The use of his first name was deliberate, a final sealing of their pact. "And as of this moment, you are my most valuable asset." Liam's world had been remade. The dealership was no longer just his place of work. It was his area of operations. The long, gleaming hallways were patrol routes, the glass-walled offices observation posts. Barrett Cole was the target, and the employees were a mix of frightened civilians and potential informants. He now moved with a quiet, renewed purpose, his military training providing a framework for the corporate espionage he was now engaged in. His objective: to observe, to document, and to survive without breaking cover. The first opportunity presented itself near the hydraulic lifts in the service bay. He saw Sal the mechanic staring at his most recent pay stub, his face a thundercloud of frustration. A few minutes later, Sal threw a wrench into his toolbox with a loud, angry clatter. Liam, who was methodically cleaning a nearby workstation, waited for the right moment. When Sal was alone, Liam approached, his expression neutral. "Everything all right?" he asked, his voice low. Sal looked up, his eyes darting around the bay. "It's Cole, man. He did it again." He lowered his voice to a harsh whisper. "I worked 8 hours of overtime last week. 8. My kid had a fever, had to see a doctor. I needed the money. He approved the hours on the digital clock-in. I saw him do it. But my stub—" He waved the paper in disgust. "It's only showing 2. He shorts me every single time, and when I ask him about it, he just says it must be a system glitch and tells me to be grateful I have a job at all." Sal kicked the base of the lift. "What am I supposed to do? I file a big complaint. He fires me. I keep my mouth shut. He steals from my family." Liam listened, his face impassive, but his mind recorded every detail. The specific method, the gaslighting, the implied threat. "I'm sorry to hear that, Sal," was all he said, offering no advice, just a moment of quiet solidarity. He moved on with his cart, leaving Sal to his quiet fury. Later, in the silent janitor's closet, which now felt more like a covert communications hub, he pulled out the satellite phone. He typed a concise, factual message, framing it like a field report. Subject: B. Cole, tactic, post-approval alteration of digital timesheets. Target: hourly staff, service bay. Specifics: S. mechanic shorted 6 hours OT on latest pay cycle. Justification provided to employee: system glitch. Morale impact: high resentment, perceived invulnerability of target. An hour later, he was mopping the hallway near the employee break room when the door opened. Chloe, the older, kind-faced woman from accounting, was comforting one of the young receptionists, a girl named Jessica who couldn't have been more than 20. Jessica was trying and failing to stifle her sobs. "He's just a bully, honey," Chloe murmured, rubbing her back. "He said I have a bad attitude," Jessica whispered, her voice thick with tears. All because I asked if I could leave 10 minutes early next Tuesday for a dental appointment. He said my commitment was questionable and that he was thinking of restructuring the reception schedule. He wants to cut my hours. I know he does. He did the same thing to Maria last month. She asked for a Saturday off for her sister's wedding, and a week later she was down to 15 hours a week. She had to quit. I can't quit, Chloe. I have student loans. Liam continued his slow, rhythmic mopping, a silent witness to the quiet terrorism Barrett used to control his staff. It wasn't just theft. It was a systematic campaign of instability and fear. He documented this too. Another stone for Vera to build her case. Subject: B. Cole. Tactic: constructive dismissal via retaliatory hour reduction. Target: admin staff. Trigger: standard requests for schedule flexibility. Precedent: case of Mariah last month. Morale impact: pervasive fear, suppression of standard employee rights. The next piece of the puzzle came from a new observation. Liam noticed a pattern. Every Thursday evening, a delivery truck from a company called Durable Auto Solutions would arrive. But the driver, a shifty-looking man, never went to the parts department. Instead, he would take a single, heavy box to Barrett Cole's office. A few minutes later, he would emerge empty-handed, and Barrett would walk him out, sometimes slipping a thick envelope into the driver's hand. It was secretive, out of protocol, and deeply suspicious. Liam reported this as well, labeling it an operational anomaly. Miles away, Vera Ashland read each of Liam's texts, a grim satisfaction settling over her. Each report was a nail in Barrett's coffin. She forwarded the messages to her teams with new instructions. "David," she spoke into her phone to her head of auditing, "I want you to run a specific query. I need a list of every manual payroll adjustment initiated by user BCOLE for the past 24 months. Flag any that reduce overtime hours." To her legal team, "Start building a file on constructive dismissal. I want to know our exposure and our options, the downtown branch." To her finance chief, "I want a deep dive on a vendor called Durable Auto Solutions. Every invoice, every payment. I suspect a kickback scheme." Liam's intelligence was giving her the precise coordinates for her surgical strikes. Back at the dealership, Barrett's paranoia was curdling into active aggression. He sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The fear he commanded was now tinged with something else, a spark of defiance. And he seemed to know, instinctively, that Liam was the source. He began to test him. One night, Barrett left a folder marked Confidential, Q for Projections. On a table in an empty conference room he knew Liam had to clean. From his office, he watched the security feed, waiting to see if the janitor would take the bait. Liam, sensing the trap, meticulously cleaned the entire room, mopping a careful perimeter around the folder without once letting his gaze linger on it. The lack of a reaction seemed to enrage Barrett further. He confronted Liam later that night by the vending machines. "You think you're smart, don't you, Slade?" he hissed, his voice low and threatening. "I don't know what your game is, but I'm going to find out. Everybody has a weakness, a pressure point, a sick kid maybe. It would be a shame if a man's unreliable performance at work were to affect his health insurance status. I'm going to find yours." The direct threat to Maeve was a declaration of war. It took every ounce of Liam's disciplined control not to react. He simply stared back at Barrett, his silence a more potent response than any words. The very next night, Liam found the smoking gun. His final task was always emptying the office trash. As he was tying off the bag from the bin beside Barrett's desk, he saw it. The main shredder was empty, but a few strips of paper had missed the machine's teeth and fallen into the small wastebasket beside it. It was a careless mistake, the kind made by a man who believes he is untouchable. Driven by a surge of adrenaline, Liam took the main trash bag but left the small bin, emptying its contents into a separate compartment of his utility cart. Later, in the locked janitor's closet, he carefully retrieved the strips. Under the dim, flickering light of a single bulb, He pieced them together on his dusty workbench. It was a fragment of an invoice, just as he'd suspected. It was from Durable Auto Solutions, billing the dealership for premium, factory-certified brake pads at a very high price. But Liam, who had become a student of the dealership's operations, recognized that the part number listed on the invoice was for a cheap, uncertified aftermarket brand. It was a forgery, a ghost invoice. Barrett was installing inferior parts, endangering customers, and pocketing the massive difference with his supplier. His hands trembled as he held the evidence. This was it. This was everything. He heard footsteps approaching in the hallway, quick and angry. They stopped directly outside his door. The handle rattled. It was locked.
Slade!
Barrett's voice was a furious bark.
What are you doing in there? Open this door now!
Liam's blood ran cold. The voice outside the thin metal door was sharp, impatient, and laced with a paranoia that had been simmering for days. It was Barrett Cole.
Slade, what are you doing in there? Open this door now!
The handle rattled violently, a sound that seemed to echo the frantic hammering of Liam's own heart. Panic, hot and sharp, flared in his chest. In his hands, he held the fragile, pieced-together evidence, a flimsy paper shield that was both his greatest weapon and his greatest vulnerability. He had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. His eyes darted around the cramped, cluttered closet, a space that had once been his sanctuary but now felt like a trap. His gaze landed on a large, open box of powdered laundry soap on the workbench. It was his only chance. As Barrett's fist pounded on the door, a muffled, furious thud, Liam's military training took over. The panic receded, replaced by a surge of pure, focused adrenaline. His movements became swift and economical. With one hand, he dug a shallow trench in the fine white powder. With the other, he carefully laid the reconstructed invoice inside, the strips of paper looking like a delicate, buried secret. He smoothed the powder over it, praying it was seamless. He grabbed a can of metal polish from the shelf, twisted the cap, and deliberately spilled a small puddle onto the concrete floor near his feet. He took one final, steadying breath, wiped the nervous sweat from his palms onto his uniform trousers, and unlocked the door. He swung it open to find Barrett Cole standing there, his face a mask of furious paranoia. The manager physically shoved past him, invading the small space, his eyes scanning every corner like a predator searching for its prey. "What were you hiding?" Barrett demanded, his voice a low, aggressive growl. "I heard you scrambling in here. Don't lie to me, Slade. What were you doing?" "Organizing the inventory, Mr. Cole," Liam said, his voice a carefully constructed monotone. "The new supply order is due tomorrow." He gestured vaguely towards a clipboard hanging on the wall, a prop in his desperate improvisation. "Liar!" Barrett hissed. He began his search in earnest, his movements jerky and violent. He knocked a stack of clean rags off a shelf. He threw open a small metal locker. He kicked at an empty bucket, sending it skittering into the wall. "You've been sneaking around, whispering with the other rats. I see you. I see everything." His eyes fell on the box of soap powder. For a terrifying, heart-stopping second, Liam was sure he was caught. Barrett moved towards it, his hand outstretched. But instead of looking inside, he simply picked up the heavy box and shook it. Hearing nothing but the soft shoosh of the powder, he slammed it back down on the workbench, a cloud of white dust puffing into the air. Finding nothing, his frustration boiled over. He spun back to Liam, getting so close Liam could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "You think you're clever, don't you? You think you have some guardian angel in corporate watching your back." He jabbed a finger hard into Liam's chest. "Let me be clear. I am the only power that matters on this floor. I am watching every move you make. One slip, and I will find a reason to get rid of you that no one in corporate can argue with. Do you understand me?" Liam held his ground, his face unreadable. He gestured towards the small puddle on the floor. "I was moving the ladder and knocked over the polish. I was just about to clean it up." Barrett glared at the puddle, then back at Liam. His eyes narrowed to slits. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't prove it. With a final, disgusted scoff, he stormed out. Liam leaned against the cool metal of the door, letting out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. His legs felt weak. That was too close. He knew he couldn't leave the evidence there a moment longer. Barrett was no longer just suspicious. He was actively hunting, and he was becoming unhinged. He finished his shift in a state of hypervigilance. As soon as his shift was over, he returned to the closet. He locked the door, his hands trembling slightly as he carefully excavated the fragile invoice from its hiding place. He gently brushed the powder off, folded it into a thick, tight square, and tucked it into the hidden inner pocket of his wallet. He didn't make the call from the dealership's parking lot. He drove 5 blocks away, parking on a dark, anonymous side street, watching his rearview mirror for any sign he was being followed. He pulled out the satellite phone Vera had given him. He dialed the number. "This is Liam Slade," he said when the assistant answered. "I need to speak to Ms. Ashland. It's an emergency." A moment later, Vera's voice was on the line, alert and sharp despite the late hour. "Liam, what's happened?" "I have it," he said, his voice low and urgent. "The proof. It's worse than we thought. He's running a criminal kickback scheme with a parts supplier." He took a breath. "Vera, these aren't floor mats or air fresheners. He's installing cheap, uncertified brake pads in customer cars and billing for premium. I have a forged invoice I pieced together from his shredder bin." The line was silent for a moment. When Vera spoke, her voice was a blade of ice. "He's putting my customers' lives at risk." "Barrett knows I'm up to something," Liam warned. "He confronted me tonight. He's watching me." "Then we act now," Vera said decisively. "Meet me tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, the same cafe. Bring the evidence. I will handle everything." Her voice was a comforting wave of absolute command. He drove home through the sleeping city, the weight of the evidence in his wallet feeling like a brand. When he let himself into the apartment, the first gray light of dawn was beginning to seep through the windows. He didn't feel tired. He was running on pure adrenaline. He walked into the living room and saw Maeve, curled up asleep, her favorite book resting on her chest. He carefully took the folded invoice from his wallet. He walked over to a small framed photo on the bookshelf, the last picture he had of his wife, smiling on a sunny day. He took the back off the frame, placed the evidence between the photo and the backing board, and sealed it up. It was a sacred trust, a secret shared with the memory of the woman who had always believed in his unwavering moral compass. He stood there for a long time, looking from his wife's smiling face to his daughter's peaceful one. He thought of all the families who had bought cars from the dealership, driving on highways with brake pads they trusted to be safe. Barrett's greed had put them all at risk. "I have to do this," he whispered into the quiet room, a promise to his wife's memory and his daughter's future. "So you can grow up in a world where men like him don't get to win." The cafe was just as quiet as it had been before, but the atmosphere between them was entirely different. The exploratory caution was gone, replaced by the focused tension of a pre-battle briefing. Liam sat and slid his wallet across the table. He said nothing. Vera opened it, retrieved the carefully folded, reconstructed invoice, and laid it on the table between them. She studied it, her sharp eyes tracing the mismatched part numbers, the forged letterhead. A look of profound disgust hardened her features. "Sloppy," she murmured, more to herself than to him. He was getting arrogant and careless. That's how they always get caught. She carefully placed the document into a protective plastic sleeve and added it to the file she'd brought with her. "This is the final piece, the linchpin that connects his greed to genuine criminal endangerment. Thank you, Liam." She pushed a cup of coffee towards him. "Today," she said, her tone shifting from analytical to tactical, "we are going to restore order to my company, and you are going to be there to see it." She laid out the plan with the precision of a field general. Her head of security and a team of forensic accountants were already in position nearby. They would enter the dealership at 10:30 a.m., a peak time for Saturday morning sales traffic. Barrett thrives on the perception of power, Vera explained, her voice low and intense. We are going to dismantle that perception in the most public way possible. He will not be given the dignity of a private dismissal. She looked at Liam, her expression softening for a moment. Your role in this is simple, but it is the most important. He will try to paint this as a corporate witch hunt, a personal vendetta from the head office. Your presence there, as the man he personally wronged, refutes that narrative completely. You are the human face of his corruption. You are the truth, and you need to be in that room when the lights come on. What happens after? Liam asked, the question of his own future hanging in the balance. After today, your employment at that branch is terminated, Vera said, then held up a hand to stop his immediate concern. Because you will no longer be a janitor. I have a new position I've created, one that requires a man of your unique skills and unquestionable integrity. But we will discuss that later. For now, know this. Your safety, and your daughter's, are my primary concern. There will be no retaliation. An hour and a half later, Liam walked through the glass doors of the dealership for what he felt was the last time. He was dressed in his simple jeans and button-down shirt. He approached the reception desk, his heart pounding a steady, nervous rhythm. As Vera predicted, when Barrett was told Liam was there to quit and get his check, the manager emerged from his office with a triumphant smirk. "Slade," he gloated, loud enough for the entire showroom to hear. "Finally decided you can't handle the heat. I knew you didn't have the stomach for it. Wrote you a check myself this morning. Don't let the door hit you on the way out." He made a show of handing the envelope to Liam, relishing the public humiliation. Liam took it without a word, his face a mask of calm. He stood his ground, waiting. The showroom was bustling with customers and salespeople, a theater for the final act. "What are you still doing here?" Barrett sneered. "The show's over." "I don't think so." A voice cut through the air, clear and cold as a winter morning. The main doors had opened again. Vera Ashland entered, flanked by two imposing men in simple dark suits. Behind them, a man and a woman carrying briefcases. The entire showroom fell silent. Every head turned. Barrett's triumphant smirk dissolved into a mask of pure panic. "Miss Ashland, what a surprise! To what do we owe the honor?" Vera walked directly towards him, her heels clicking a steady, damning rhythm on the marble. She didn't stop until she was only a few feet away. She ignored his outstretched hand. "Mr. Cole," she began, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the room. "Your employment with Ashland Automotive Group is terminated, effective immediately." A collective gasp went through the staff. Sal, the mechanic, who was walking across the showroom, stopped dead in his tracks. "An internal audit," Vera continued, her voice as sharp as glass, "has confirmed evidence of systematic wage theft from your hourly employees." She paused, letting her eyes sweep over the stunned faces of the mechanics and detailers. "Furthermore, we have evidence of significant and ongoing supply chain fraud." Barrett's face was ashen. That's a mistake. A clerical error." "And then there is this," Vera said. And from her file, she produced the plastic sleeve containing the pieced-together invoice. She didn't hand it to him. She laid it flat on the hood of the nearest gleaming sports car, a final, damning piece of evidence in the temple he had corrupted. "This is proof of a criminal conspiracy, in collusion with a company called Durable Auto Solutions, that has actively and knowingly endangered the lives of our customers by installing uncertified, potentially faulty brake pads in their vehicles." Barrett completely unraveled. His eyes darted around wildly, landing on the one person he could blame. He pointed a trembling finger at Liam. "It was him!" he shrieked, his voice cracking. "He planted that. He's been after me ever since I had to discipline him. He's a disgruntled employee, a nobody. Don't listen to him." Vera didn't move. She simply turned her head slightly and looked at Liam, a silent invitation. She was giving him the floor. Liam took a single step forward. He wasn't a janitor anymore. He wasn't a soldier. He was simply a man who had seen enough. He looked directly at the crumbling, desperate manager. His voice was not loud, but it filled the cavernous room with its quiet, unshakable certainty. "The truth doesn't need to be planted, Mr. Cole," Liam said calmly. "It just needs a little light to be seen." It was over. The lie was broken. Barrett seemed to shrink, the fight draining out of him, leaving a hollowed-out shell of a man. Vera nodded to her head of security, a man named Jeff. "Jeff, please escort Mr. Cole from the premises," she said. "He is to have no contact with any company property or personnel. The auditors will meet him at his office to collect his keys and access cards." As Jeff stepped forward, Barrett made no move to resist. He was led away, a ghost in his own dealership, past the silent, staring faces of the people he had terrorized and stolen from. The showroom was deathly quiet. Vera turned to face the staff. Her voice, now firm and reassuring, filled the space. "A team from corporate will be here for the next few days to conduct a full audit. I give you my personal guarantee that every dollar of stolen wages will be repaid with interest. An interim manager will be here this afternoon. We are going to fix this. The culture of fear at this branch ends today." She then turned, her gaze resting on Liam. In front of everyone, the customers, the mechanics, the salespeople who had watched him get fired just days before, she offered him the ultimate vindication. "Mr. Slade," she said, her voice clear and strong, "thank you for your courage and integrity. My office will be in touch this afternoon to discuss your future with this company." With a final, decisive nod, she turned and walked out, her team following in her wake. The spell was broken. A quiet cheer went up from the mechanics. Sal rushed over to Liam, grabbing his hand and shaking it with both of his face split by a grin of pure relief. Chloe, the accountant, was openly weeping, a look of profound gratitude on her face. Liam stood in the middle of the showroom, the place where he had been humiliated, fired, and rendered invisible. But now he was seen. Across the room, he caught Vera's eye just before she exited. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod, a sign of deep and profound respect. The battle was won. 3 months later, Liam Slade stood in the bright, airy kitchen of his new apartment. The afternoon sun streamed through a large window that overlooked a quiet, tree-lined street, a world away from the cracked pavement and alleyways of his old neighborhood. The air no longer carried the scent of industrial cleaner or the faint metallic tang of his daughter's nebulizer. Instead, it smelled of the fresh bread he'd picked up from the bakery down the street. The greatest change, however, was the sound. It was the sound of Maeve's breathless, joyful laughter as she ran a toy car along the back of the sofa, her breathing deep, even, and clear. The new specialist, covered by the company's premier health insurance, had immediately identified a rare bronchial condition that had been misdiagnosed for years. With the right medication, the change had been staggering. The dark circles under her eyes had vanished. The wearying, rattling cough that had been the soundtrack to his nightmares for years was gone. The suffocating weight of fear that had been Liam's constant companion had finally lifted, leaving behind a profound, unfamiliar sense of peace. His new life was as different from his old one as this bright, spacious apartment was from their former cramped walk-up. His official title was Director of the newly formed Oversight and Integrity Division, a role Vera had created specifically for him. It was a dual responsibility. Half his time was spent utilizing his linguistic skills and quiet, steady demeanor to manage relationships with high-value international clients. The other half, the half that felt most important, was spent managing the new company-wide ethics hotline he had designed and implemented. He was in his small home office now, reviewing a new report that had come in anonymously from a branch in Texas. An employee was reporting that the service manager was pressuring technicians to upsell customers on unnecessary repairs. The old Ashland way would have been to ignore it until it became a legal liability. The new way was different. Liam picked up his phone and dictated a calm, empathetic, but firm email to his assistant. Please arrange a flight for me to Dallas for next week, and schedule a call with the branch manager. Let him know I'm coming to understand his team's workflow and help them implement best practices. The tone should be supportive, not accusatory. We're here to fix problems, not just punish people. He was a builder, not a demolitions expert. A knock on his apartment door that evening brought a welcome visitor. It was Vera, dressed not in a power suit, but in a simple, elegant dress. She carried a small, gift-wrapped box. I was in the neighborhood, she said with a smile that now came more easily to her. The neighborhood of my building, 500 floors below your penthouse? Liam teased, a comfortable rapport now existing between them. Details, she said, her eyes twinkling. She handed the gift to a wide-eyed Maeve. Maeve unwrapped it to find a beautiful, antique music box made of inlaid wood. It was my father's, Vera said softly to Liam, as Maeve turned the small key, and a soft, hopeful melody tinkled out. He believed that even the most broken things could be made to play a beautiful song again if you just had the patience to fix them. They sat and talked while Maeve drew at the kitchen table, the music box playing softly beside her. Productivity at the downtown branch is up 20%, Vera reported, sipping the tea Liam had made her. Employee turnover is practically zero. It turns out that people work harder and are more loyal when you don't systematically steal from them and threaten their families. A revolutionary concept, I know. She paused, a thoughtful look on her face.
I had a call last week. From an assistant to Tariq Al-Jamil. Liam looked up, surprised.
It seems our story has become something of a legend in certain circles, Vera continued. He wanted to extend his most profound and sincere apologies for his conduct. He's made a 7-figure donation to the pediatric wing of Maeve's hospital. He also wants to establish a major corporate account with us for his European operations. A massive deal. She held his gaze. He insisted, however, that he would only conduct the negotiations personally with you. Liam considered this for a long moment. The old Liam would have refused out of pride. The desperate Liam would have agreed out of necessity. But this new Liam, a man whose foundation was once again solid beneath his feet, felt something different. Tell him, Liam said finally, that I will be happy to meet with him, at his convenience. It was an act of grace, the final closing of a painful circle. The professional line between them had long since blurred into a deep, abiding respect and a warm, easy friendship that felt like the sturdy foundation of something more. On Saturday, the sun was bright and the air was clear. Liam stood in a park, pushing Maeve on a swing, a task that once would have left her breathless. Now she flew, her legs kicking towards the sky, her laughter echoing through the air like the most beautiful music he had ever heard. "Higher, Daddy, higher!" she cried, a picture of health and happiness. Vera was there, sitting on a nearby bench, not as a CEO, but as a friend. She was watching Maeve with a genuine, heartfelt smile. There was no talk of business. There was only the quiet joy of a perfect afternoon. Maeve eventually slowed down, hopping off the swing and running over to them. She held out a crayon drawing she had been working on. "This is for you, Miss Vera," she said, her voice full of childish sincerity. Vera took the drawing. It was a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands under a huge, smiling sun. A tall man, a tall woman with silver hair, and a small girl in the middle. Vera's composed facade faltered for a second, her eyes glistening with an emotion Liam had never seen from her before. She looked from the drawing to Liam, and in that shared glance, a silent understanding passed between them. They were not a CEO and her director. They were not just friends. They were, in the way that truly mattered, a family. As Liam watched his daughter, healthy and free, and the powerful woman who had become his trusted partner, he felt a profound sense of completion. He had walked through the fire of humiliation and despair, and had emerged on the other side, not just intact, but stronger. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with the loudest voice or the biggest bank account. Sometimes it's the quiet observer, the steady hand, the person who holds on to their character when the world tries to strip it away. Liam's story is a reminder that integrity is a language everyone understands, a foundation upon which any broken thing can be rebuilt into something beautiful and strong. I'd love to know where you are watching from today. What part of the world are you in? Your voice matters in this community, so please share it in the comments below. And if you believe the world needs more stories of quiet courage and unexpected heroes, stories that remind us of the good in people, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. You'll be the first to know when the next story is ready. Thank you for your time. Your presence here is what makes this all worthwhile. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never underestimate the person holding the mop.